During the winter months at Yorkshire Photo Walks, we do quite a few low light and nighttime photography tuition sessions. That's because I'm of the belief that nighttime is the right time to learn about photography. Instead of being able to go with the automatic settings, we're forced to go back to basics and learn how to do things manually. In this latest video in the Basics of Photography series from Yorkshire Photo Walks, I'll be helping you to set up for a night shoot. The astute people amongst you will probably have realised that it's still light, and you might be thinking, well, this is a nighttime photography video, has he gone crazy? But no, there's method in my madness, because it pays to be prepared when it comes to nighttime and low light photography, because a lot of the equipment and our camera settings can be set up when it's light to help us when it gets dark. So first of all, before I run through all those camera settings, I'd just like to give you a bit of advice on equipment. Now, to be honest, if you're used to landscape photography, the equipment that you need during the night time isn't going to be that much different to the stuff that you'd take out during the day. The first piece of vital equipment is a tripod. Because we're dealing with longer exposures after dark, we need the stability of a tripod to limit the risk of any camera shake. Another thing that complements a tripod is a remote shutter release. This allows you to stand clear of the camera and not have to press the button on the top every time you want to take a photograph, and therefore increasing the risk of that camera shake. There's also two other pieces of equipment that I would definitely recommend having in your nighttime photography kit bag. The first one is a decent torch. Now, I'm not talking about the sort of torch that you keep under the sink just in case the power goes off here. I'm talking about a really good torch with a good range and good brightness. I'll come on to why you need one of those a little bit later on, but they are incredibly useful. The torch that I use is a brand called LED Lenser, which are absolutely fantastic. There are plenty of other brands out there that do a similar job, so it's down to you to go out there and find the right one for you. Another piece of equipment that a lot of people find useful is a head torch, because although in a moment I'm going to be talking through settings that we can set when it's light, inevitably there are going to be some tweaks that you have to make after dark. And with a head torch, it gives you the brightness of the light, but it also allows you to have two hands free to change any settings you need to on the camera. Now you've got your equipment sorted, it's time to talk about camera settings. Firstly, we need to turn any image stabilization off. This is recommended practice if it is dark or light whenever you use a tripod, as it has the opposite effect, making stable photographs look shaky and lacking in sharpness. This is usually a switch on the lens. On some cameras where it's built into the body, you'll have to find it in the camera menu. Secondly, we need to focus manually to infinity. Our autofocus simply won't work after dark as there aren't enough contrast points for it to latch onto. Again, usually a switch on the lens will turn autofocus off and turn manual focus on. You then need to focus on something in the distance and leave it there. When it comes to exposure triangle settings, you need to set an aperture of between f5.6 and f11, depending on how much ambient light is available. When we focus manually to infinity and set one of these apertures, we can be pretty confident that our focal point will sit within the focal plane. In a city where there is lots of street lighting, f11 will be perfect, but if there's less light, you may need to stop down to f5.6 to reduce exposure time. Please note at this point that the settings for astrophotography are slightly different, as we need to open our aperture as wide as it will go. With ISO, it's always best to keep as low as you possibly can, but at night we do need to increase it slightly, so we're not standing around for ages waiting for our photographs to be made. It is best to test your ISO at different levels and set the highest ISO with the least amount of noise on your specific camera. Shutter speed will depend on the amount of ambient light available. If it is reasonably bright, most cameras will take exposures up to 30 seconds. When it comes to very dark scenes, you'll need to use the bulb or time mode, which puts you in control of your exposure time. It is using these settings where your remote shutter release will come into its own. For astrophotography, we need to increase our ISO to a level which will allow us to take our shutter speed down to about 15 to 25 seconds. Any slower than this and you'll start to see star trails. At this point, you may want to use that powerful torch I mentioned earlier to paint in light to illuminate darker areas, but I'll leave that to another video. This may all sound very complicated, especially if you've never set your camera manually before, but if you give it a go, you'll be surprised how quickly and easily you will achieve amazing results. The best way to do this is to put theory into practice by joining us on one of our low light and nighttime photo walks. These are staged throughout the winter between November and March. We also team up with the Yorkshire Dales Dark Skies Festival in February, so keep an eye on our schedule at yorkshirephotowalks.com. Join us and learn how to make the invisible visible. Remember, don't just photograph Yorkshire, experience it with Yorkshire Photo Walks. Until next time, thank you for watching.